Madagascar, the island at the end of the earth. Madagascar is the fourth largest island in the world and is a mixture of both Asian and African cultures. The first settlers of this island were sailors and traders from the Asia-Pacific region. However, due to its close proximity to the African continent, African influences were also introduced later on. The national language of Malagasy that is spoken here is a unique language spoken nowhere else on Earth. While there may be a word here or there that hints to its origins somewhere in the Pacific, there is very little similarity to any one Pacific language. All the books that the United Pentecostal Church of Madagascar uses have to either be translated from English or French, or they have to be written locally. So we translate and print. We have translated many of Brother David Bernard's books to be used in the Bible school and for general knowledge. Recently, we translated Brother Stan Gleason's book, Follow to Lead, which focuses on discipleship, and also Brother Anthony Mangan's book, Heaven to Earth, that speaks about the tabernacle prayer. Our printing process has matured greatly over the past 20 years with the introduction of the digital duplicator. While it may look a lot like a photocopier, it actually uses ink instead of toner for the printing process. We have lost track of how many sheets of paper we have put through machines like this one you see here, but we have worn out multiple machines and estimate that we have printed over 50 million full-size sheets of paper. All of this can now be accomplished easily and with minimal mess. Once the paper has had the ink applied to it, it is then collated into a book. This is done completely by hand, so sheets are stacked one upon the next until the full book has been assembled. From there, either it is stapled or it is cut and bound with plastic binding combs. The stapled books must still be folded and trimmed in order to have a nice straight edge. Now the book is ready to be used. As we mentioned already, most of the books are for our Bible school program. This program truly is the strength of the work in Madagascar. We are able to graduate around 50 to 60 new preachers each year, with most of them going to either start a new church or fill a pastoral position in a church that needs a pastor. They are in classes 5 days per week for a total of 72 plus weeks of schooling, to finish in excess of 1,500 classroom hours, as is required by the GATS program. After preparing themselves for 20 months, they launch into the harvest field to preach the life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ to their fellow countrymen. This would not be possible without the effort to print books and materials into the Malagasy language. It truly does take a lot of time and a lot of work, but it is worth it all. Many countries with UPCI Works have similar programs because they too have language constraints. Ink onto paper, so that the truth of God's Word can be planted into the hearts of all mankind. When this happens, lives are changed for an eternity. The process there is something that, as I mentioned in the video, is very important, because the printed word is needed in the training, and brother Adam spoke about that in the Africa session, how important training was, how important Bible school was. But in order to have school, in order to have Sunday school, in order to have any kind of seminars and all that, we need printed material. So that's where we have our printing office, and they work and they print book after book after book after book after book. And it's a long process to get to the printing stage, because you have to translate. Some countries you can use English, and so you just can get the books and have them printed straight out. But many countries you have to translate from English or some other language into the local language. So that's the process we have to go through to get to the printing point, and then we teach those subjects in our Bible school. So that's kind of what we wanted to show. I'll let my wife jump in and she's got anything to add to what we're saying there, but then we can open up for any questions.
Here in Madagascar, we are blessed to have full-time workers in our printing department. And so a lot of the hands-on, I do computer work, but they do the actual assembling and all of that.
Countries around the world, the book assembly is something that the missionary team works on, and this is something that aimers and short-termers and even career missionaries will work to assemble books, print books, assemble books, and get them distributed. So that is something that is a big part of a lot of what a lot of missionaries do. And so that was one of the reasons that we wanted to show that process, and then to also show it being taught in the Bible school. We print books for ladies, we print books for Sunday school, we print books for youth. Just any time you can get resources into the hands of people. And in America, you know, we just walk into a bookstore, order it online, Kindle, whatever. We really take printed material for granted. And many countries of the world do not have access to books like that. And so it's just a big part of what we do. And so that was one of the reasons we wanted to talk about it. So yeah, y'all got any questions? We'll be happy to discuss it more.
I know Gordon Smoke's probably used to seeing some of that work. I know they did a lot of that in Tanzania. So
Y'all can unmute now.
yeah, you can unmute now if you want to talk. We can open it back up and just whoever wants to talk, we'll try to field any questions you might have.
I don't want to take a lot of time from the short-term people who have questions. So quickly, can you just go over what your process is for the actual translation work? Or is it a national working with a global missionary, or is it like just a national alone who speaks both languages, or what's the process that you guys have?
I actually had some voiceover recorded to put into the video, but it just didn't fit with the timing of it. But the process is, for any book that we're translating, Paula, my wife, she will take the book and go through it and simplify the language, because a lot of English writers, they'll use flowery words and vocabulary that a person that studied English as a second language may not understand. So she'll go through the book, simplify it, stay true to the original subject matter. Maybe every once in a while take out some examples that don't apply at all and make it as simple as possible so that people can more apply it to the Malagasy language. Malagasy has a smaller vocabulary, so sometimes we'll have 3, 4, 5 words to say something, and they'll only have the one word. So she'll get it as simple as possible, pass it off to the translator, and we have several different translators that we're using, local church people, and they will take it and they'll work and translate it and then send it back to her. She will then go back through the book, the English and the Malagasy together, and make sure that the thought came across completely and that it looked all correct. Then we'll pass it off to someone else who can go through it and look for any grammatical errors and things like that, and make sure that they haven't read the English, so they don't know what the English says, and they're reading the Malagasy alone, and make sure that it makes sense to what they're reading. It makes sense. And then we'll do the layout work and then print it out and take it out, and they'll do the printing process. So that's kind of the steps that we go through.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have a question or something that you saw that sparked some thought? I'm not looking at the chat, so.
My question is, so at the beginning of the work in Madagascar, how did the printing department get started? Like so whenever it was set down and discussed, what did you do after that? What was some of the first steps you took to setting up a printing department?
Well, obviously that was before my time when it really got started in the very beginning, but it's come a long way. They started the first Bible school in 1975. So before they could start Bible school, they had to print books. Now, our number of books at the Bible school at that time is a whole lot fewer than the number of Bible school books we have now. But they had the old Gestetner mimeograph machine where you put the stencil into a typewriter and you type it, and it basically cuts the stencil, and then you put it on a deal with the ink and turn it, and it pulls the paper through. And in the beginning it was actually hand crank and everything, and they'd print the books that way. So that was something they had to do. I mean, there was no option. You couldn't do Bible school without books, so they had to print the books and they had to figure out how to do it. Now, with our process now, it's a whole lot easier. But it's something that they knew very soon that they would have to do. So by 1974, 75, they were already printing books. Of course, the church started in 1970, so it wasn't too long of a process, and they were already doing it.
What is the cost of such equipment? And like, do you raise projects for that kind of stuff?
We get raised projects to buy the digital duplicators. Sometimes we can, from the sale of the books, we'll kind of have a little extra fund, so we don't pay for it all with outside funds. We can use some local funds, but we try to keep the book cost as low as possible. The last machine that you just saw there, we actually bought that out of Bible school funds because we had some extra Bible school funds, and the old one, it was about shot. It was taking 4 times as long to print anything as it should have. So we used Bible school funds to buy the printer for the printing office, because the majority of the work that they're doing is for the Bible school anyway.
There are some options of getting, like, people will buy the machine for you. There's been through the years several different people in the States, groups that will buy the digital duplicator. But for Madagascar, to get the machine here, it's just, to get it shipped here, it's not cost effective. So depending on the country that you're in, that might be an option.
And we'll be sending it.
But for us, they're available here, and so we can buy the machine here for a reasonable price. But we do raise project funds for that.
Do you remember what the cost on that last one was?
I would have to look at my report.
Was it 8 million? Was it
I don't remember.
12 million? It's about $3,000 or $4,000 for a machine. I'm talking millions, but that's local currency. That's not a lot of money. We go to the grocery store and spend a couple $100,000. So.
Sister Shrek Eyes, do you have anything to add on that?
We have recently moved to the Dominican Republic 4 years ago, and have actually bought our first printing press during this time period. So we're just getting into it. And I was interested in the fact that you said that they are all employees, correct? Yeah. They're paid employees. Is that something that, that's what I was gonna ask, how many, and approximately, do you know, I may have missed it on the presentation, how many books you print in like a year time? Is there any idea? Do you have any idea?
I mean, when we print a Bible school book, we're printing at least 200 copies of it. If it's a new book, then we'll normally do more than that, because we want to make it available for our preachers that are already licensed. Mm-hmm. But we're putting at least, 200 to 300 copies of a book at a time. And each book will, of course, be somewhere between 40 to 70 sheets of paper. And you're doing all that and then collating it and everything. What kind of system did y'all get? A risograph?
You should have my husband on this chat, but he's in a board meeting right now, a national board meeting. But I'll have him tell you he loves it. And we did get it shipped in here. But it
looks something similar to what we
to
got.
yours, yes. Actually, it has a collator on it. So it actually
nice.
makes the books. It's wonderful. We're so thankful. It was shipped in because it was cost effective to have it sent here. Do you have that printing shop open all year, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
It's full time. Yeah.
Okay.
We print song books. We print the Sunday school books. We print, and of course, Sunday school books. We've got two divisions in the year, and then you've got all the different levels. And so that's a big printing job as well, because they'll do it twice a year, printing big Sunday school book run, and that's a big job. Takes
they also
a
do
month
printing
just to
for
do
our
that.
national office. So like the church report papers, anything that needs to be mass, more than
produced,
they'll do the printing for that. So yeah, we have the 3 guys who work full time.
year round.
Here our focus so far, because we're just getting going, has been Bible school and the Sunday school material as well.
Right.
And just trying to get that going. And we don't have full-time employees. So if you allow me to do the pitch, we can use Amers to work in this area.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And that was one of the reasons that we wanted to mention, not necessarily because we need Amers here to do it, because we have 3 full-time employees that do the work, but it's just to put the awareness out there that this is a real need. And you don't have to know the language to assemble a book. If there's a page number you can count, then you can assemble the book, you can staple it, you can do all of that. And it's one of the jobs that you may not be the one out there preaching, you may not be the one out there laying hands on people, but you will never know the people who are reached with the gospel because of a book. It's like a tract, and that's another part of printing. We do print, you know, you print tracts as well. That you never know who's reached, but we all know that God is a great accountant and he keeps track of it all. And so it is a very, very important ministry.
Absolutely.
I see a couple hands raised. I don't know if that was on purpose or by accident.
Well, that was going to be my
go ahead.
question is, how does short-term missions fit into what you just answered it, because you said you had 3 full-time. So I said, well, how does short-term work into that? But what you're doing is focusing on other areas, not so much your.
We're promoting for other countries, because a short-termer can go in and in a short amount of time, you can help a missionary print and assemble a lot of books. And so that, or you could also train other people to do it. If that's something that you can go in, you can learn how to do it, and then you can help them train nationals to do it. So it's a very needed thing for many missionaries.
I mean, Madagascar is a very advanced work compared to many of them. So we've kind of got a lot of things figured out here, and salaries and stuff are also cheap here. So we can hire people and they can work full time, and they make a good wage for the average person, but it's not costing a whole lot. But other places are not like that. So it gives short-term missions a way to go in and actually do something productive. They may not be a teacher, they may not be a preacher, but they can go in and they can run the machine and they can put the books together, and they can staple and they can cut edges of paper and all that with just technical know-how and just a willingness to do work.
Can I jump in, Chris?
Sure.
So when I was high school with my parents in Tanzania, we had our digital duplicator up and running, and we had 2 ladies from the States come in specifically to help us run our digital duplicator. And while they were there, we ran off hundreds of thousands of sheets of paper off of our machine. And when we had 500 copies of each page of an 80-page book just strewn out across the office, if it's just 1 or 2 of us working on it, then that really adds up. When you're adding 1 piece of paper at a time to a book, you're spending hours in there. But you add 2 people that can run the machine and collate paper and staple and everything, you're more than halving your time, because many hands make light work. So it's most definitely a place where somebody that wants to do something but they don't know what they can do can jump in and make a huge impact, because those thousands of books that we put together went all over Tanzania and affected more people than there were books, most certainly.
Yeah,
and you get dizzy going around the table collating too.
we kind of got a good system. We just do 4 sheets at a time. That way they can sit there and just take 4 sheets, and then they'll stack that 4 sheet on top of another 4 sheet on top of another 4 sheet. That keeps it kind of nice and orderly. That's something we added in a few years back.
I have a question. For those that feel called to a nation or are newbie missionaries like me and David that are learning a language, at what point did you start translating? Or I guess for Paula too, at one point, because you feel like you have to be fluent, but I'm not sure that was the case for y'all.
Well, going back over the books that we're reprinting now
Mhm.
and kind of going back and looking at the English, we find that the old translation really was not as good as what we're doing now.
Yeah.
So the years of experience in the language is making our translation a lot better. So we look at some of the very first Bible school books, and I'm surprised the students knew anything after studying those books. But you have to, I mean, some languages are easier than others.
Yeah.
Malagasy is one of the easier languages, but it's still not easy. And you have to give yourself to the language. I mean, that's for any short-term work, it's a harder thing to do that. But if you're in short-term and you're really thinking about going long-term, you've got to give yourself to language study so you can do that.
I started out doing, when I got into helping actually I think we were aimers when my husband's parents gave me the responsibility of helping with this book editing. So I started out taking something that was already translated, and then I was doing editing work, and really it helped me learn because I would take the English and Malagasy side by side and go back and forth, and so it really helped me get a lot of vocabulary and learn a lot, even if I maybe wasn't very good at correcting it in the beginning because I didn't really know. It still helped me to learn. And so, but the formatting, you don't necessarily have to be fluent in the language to know how to format something, if the stuff has already been translated properly. So you can still help with formatting, because I find that here their computer skills are not very good, and so they're not very good with the formatting part of things. And so that has been one of the things that I still do pretty much all the formatting work on the books.
Thank you.
Was somebody else getting ready to say something there when Ashley spoke up?
Yeah, from what I understand, you require a duplicator, an edge cutter, a stapler. Is there any other equipment that you, I assume also a binder for the plastic ones? Is there any other
really
equipment
like
that you say?
Binders, yeah.
I mean, that's the main ones. You need the computer, of course, to do the layout work and all that. And then you print on a good quality printer because you're
Some
using,
of the newer machines, you can
hook
go
straight to the
from
computer.
your computer to the duplicator.
But like ours acts more like a photocopier. So you put the original sheet of paper in, it pulls it through, it basically scans it, and it burns the stencil for the printing process. But yeah, then you need, you can do stapled pages. Once the books get up to 50, 60 sheets of paper, it doesn't do a very good job stapling because it's so thick. So you've got to kind of go with the binding, and that you need a comb binder so you can do thicker books. So some of our books that are thicker, like the One God book of Brother Bernard's, that's pretty thick. And you know, New Birth, so a lot of his books are thicker, so we do them with the comb binding. But the one you saw them putting together there, that was done with just the staple in the middle, and that was about the limit of a staple in the middle.
So the staple, I don't know if I can find this. Once they get the book assembled, then they'll staple in the center, 2 staples, and then fold it over, and then they do the straight edge.
Okay. And lastly, like for someone who's on the edge about, obviously a lot of people already have a lot of work on their plate. If someone's on the edge about wanting to start a translation process, start a literature making process, like what would be an example or the best advice, or like just to push them over the edge? Because obviously you're passionate about this. What would be your best advice or words to them about doing it, just getting started?
I mean, look at the need, obviously. If you can get stuff that other people have printed that serves your purposes, and you may not be as pressed to do it. But most of us are not going to be in that position if you're working in countries like Madagascar that have very unique languages, and you're not going to have anything available that you can use. It's going to be Trinitarian doctrines and stuff like that that'll be taught. So the need you see is very important. You want to have books for Bible school or for Sunday school. You're going to have to produce it. And to produce it, you either got to write it or you translate it. Well, it's a whole lot easier to translate what someone else has done than it is to write all these lessons yourself, unless you're just really qualified for all that. So I think the need is kind of the driving force as to why you have to get into it. And then you just have to find the best way to do it. I mean, we've got people that studied English, but they're still not very familiar with our colloquialisms and our ways of saying things. And so you kind of got to use the right wording, like I said, Paula does, to make sure that they can translate it and it comes across properly. But I mean, to me, it's highly important to have literature available to all levels within the church.
And I mean, some countries might already have some things available, but you'll find that there is, for example, when we first came over here, they already had a pretty good selection of, the Bible school was already going at that time. And so they already had quite a few books translated for Bible school. Now we're going back through and updating and doing new books, but still. But I noticed that there wasn't a book for pastors' wives specifically. And so when I saw the need, we had just come from Bible school. I had taken a wives class at Bible school. And so I wrote Sister Enzi, that was Sister Enzi at the time at TBC, asked for permission to translate her book. And so we translated her book. And then we started noticing a need for our young people. We didn't have a book that was specifically targeted to young people. And so we worked on getting that done. So I would say if you're not into the process of translating and printing yet, kind of get a feel for what you feel the need is and start there. So if you see that there's a need for children's children's ministry, Sunday school, then start there, or ladies, or tracts, or whatever. Just kind of pick that to start and then let it grow from there.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining.
Did you
I
give
shared the link in the
Okay.
chat for the video if you wanted to see it without lagging. So you can rewatch it if you want to. You don't have to, but had a good time putting it together. We went out to the Bible school Wednesday and videoed all that, and I put it together Wednesday afternoon and Thursdays just so I could share it with us in this session.
I will say too, I thought of it a while ago and then the thought left me and it just came back. One thing I have noticed as I've traveled around the world is how much people outside of first world countries, how much they value books. In America, I know I have books, and right in this other room, I have books collecting dust, and they're just there, and I don't even really appreciate the fact that I love books, but still. But here, if you give them a book, and in other countries of the world, I've seen it, like it's a treasure, and it really does mean something to them. And so I think that this is really a ministry that can be tapped into, and then like we said, is a real opportunity for short-term missions to be involved in something that when you leave, that book stays there. And so it really is a legacy that you're creating. And so yeah, we're pretty passionate about it. So yeah.
Well, if no one has any more questions, I mean, we'll stay here as long as you want, but if no one has any more questions, and I know there's some other sessions are already going, and if you wanted to join something else before they close out for the end of the day, then you feel free to go. But thank you.